Russia still denies it, but the Twitter war, the fake news, the social media attacks, Putin's new weapon of war, as some call it, was launched against Ukraine in 2014 during its election. And just like a Cold War battle, a counteroffensive set up by the U.S. State Department pushed back. The Russians backed off, but they didn't go away. They just got better. And one former U.S. official said he tried to sound the alarm that the Russians would try the same tactics in the U.S.
During the 2016 elections, they came at us with exactly the same kinds of techniques that they were using back in Ukraine.
According to Bruen, then director of global engagement on the U.S. National Security Council, it was a sign of what was to come, the Russians' new weapon of war. And he says in 2014, 2 years before the U.S. election, he urged the State Department to keep the task force up and running and build on it.
And I was sitting at the White House telling the State Department, for the love of God, keep this up. We have a threat, a new threat that we have recognized, that we have been successful in many respects in pushing back against. This is not the moment for us to stand down.
Bruen pitched a command center that would track and counter Russian misinformation. But he says the State Department dismissed the idea. Precisely why isn't clear. CNN spoke to a half a dozen former State Department and National Security Council officials, some of whom tell us the State Department was focused on diplomacy with Russia. Others blame bureaucracy for getting in the way. Still others say no one, including Brett Bruen, accurately assessed the damage, the potential damage, to a U.S. election. Victoria Nuland, then head of the State Department's Bureau of Europe and Eurasian Affairs, told CNN by phone there was just no money for what Bruen was proposing. We were operating on a shoestring budget as it was, she said. Whatever the reason, the warning of the looming Russian threat was not shared across the Obama administration. By the time of the Republican and Democratic conventions in July 2016, more than 80 people at the Kremlin-backed Internet Research Agency were already assigned to meddling in American life. Yet in the U.S., multiple sources who dealt with national security at the time tell CNN they had no idea the extent of the Russians' activities. In other words, they missed it. On October 7th, a joint statement from Department of Homeland Security and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence warned of Russians attempting to interfere with the U.S. election process, but mentioned nothing of fake news, social media, or infiltrating American social groups. Bruen says they all should have known it because he and others warned them.
You knew enough that you would have been able to foresee the whole fake news, fake grassroots support, fake Twitters coming in the election.
Not only did I feel like I knew enough at that moment, I was sitting in the Situation Room saying, this is something that is going to march across Western Europe. It's something that's going to march over to our shores, and we need to be ready.